Welcome back to Placeholders, everybody. I am Kaylee Fretz. This week on the pod, Jonny's adventures in Asia, Geraint Thomas getting on the beers, Stefan Kung can't see where he's going, and some doping news out of Spain, plus a whole bunch of other, I would say, generally depressing news. Joining me today, Kite Waktapu.
Greetings. I mean, you didn't say it right, but...
How do you say it?
Well, my parents say it Wakatipu. I believe that's how you say it. Apparently where I took my first steps in New Zealand.
Ah, all right. Just so anybody may be confused out there,
maybe.
Kit's character on this podcast, it was BBC, but then I've just been informed that BBC doesn't have the best general connotations or connections for folks on the other side of the pond. So we've gone with NPR instead, because I think NPR is universally beloved here in the United States. And of course, if you're going to be NPR, then you have to have an NPR name, which the rules of which are you take your first name, you take the first letter of your middle name, you put it in your first name, and then your last name is the smallest place you've ever been.
That's more or less what you told us, but not quite.
Something close to that. Anyway, good to have you on, Kite. Also joining us today, Joffney Vatican. Welcome back.
Good to be back. Although the podcast seems to have taken quite a turn since the last time I was on. I'm enjoying learning that Kit took her first steps in New Zealand as if she was born in the Shire. And maybe to our American listeners, that explains her accent a bit, because it sort of matches up with some of the characters.
All right. We actually do have plenty to talk about today. We've got Kit Nicholson with us. We've got Jonny Long with us, for anybody who didn't pick up on those two voices. Jonny's just back from, a whirlwind tour of Asia. And so we are going to be talking about that a little bit later in the show. But we wanted to kick off with, frankly, a couple silly things, because like I said, the rest of the news this week, it's a downer, right? There's a lot of downers this week. So we're going to kick off with something that is maybe a little bit more lighthearted. We're going to kick off with Geraint Thomas getting on the beers. I need some context here and what he has said and what he has done and why we feel like we need to talk about Geraint Thomas drinking beer in the off season.
Well, it's nothing really new about Geraint Thomas. I think I certainly remember it was after one of the Olympics when he was still racing track, he went hard in the off season. And then after the 2018 Tour de France, which he of course won, he did a massive tour of Wales and the UK, and he completely obliterated the rest of his year and the beginning of the following year as well, and put on a few pounds, just enjoyed himself really. And that's, I guess, reappeared in this off season. He's gone back home, he's reconnected with old friends, he's doing the off season thing, and he's playing really, really hard. There was a quote that I saw it was something along the lines of, he's gone back home to see his mates. He's been drunk 12 out of the last 14 days, was I think the quote that I saw, which is going pretty hard, pretty good. I mean, I think judging by what we have gathered about certain teams, that's, you're going to work hard, you're going to play hard or harder potentially. But it also comes with the news that apparently nobody else likes to do that anymore, likes to enjoy themselves as much as Geraint Thomas does. Some of the youngsters on his team, they might have a G&T of an evening, but they're much more chilled by the sounds of it. So there's this story doing the rounds, the off-season antics, and Geraint Thomas is having a good time.
Trying to understand the 12 and 14, I would imagine that it's 3 sets of 3-night benders with like a fire break in between each triplet is how I would go about it. I don't reckon it's like 8 on, 2 off, 2 on.
He's also been touring with his podcast crew, so they've been probably bought a lot of drinks. And George North was a guest on at least one of those podcast nights. George North being, to our international listeners, a very good Welsh rugby player. They're good mates. And rugby is a very boozy culture, has a very boozy culture. It does in Wales as well. I used to play rugby in Wales. I was much bigger then, as Geraint Thomas apparently is now, than he was 4 weeks ago.
I deeply respect him saying it so openly, and it's kind of the marker of a guy who's like already done it all and won it all, because he's just like, I can say this, and I won't get judged and no one can tell me off. Like, there are definitely, like, when you talk to like random cyclists and stuff, there are definitely like pros who go hard in the winter, like especially when they live in like the sort of Girona bubbles, or where there are just a bunch of other pros around with like nothing to do. The rest of the year they have to not drink. It's also like the dumb sort of guy in their 20s thing, where when there's a thing you're not allowed to do most of the time, as soon as you kind of can do it, that's the only thing that you're going to ever do, right?
Well, I think that's the kind of funny thing for me, is that it does a little bit feel like some of these riders are younger than their actual age in a lot of ways, right? Like,
definitely.
I mean, how old is Geraint Thomas now? He's 38?
30. Oh, shit. Okay.
37.
I mean,
yeah, no, he's older than me. I actually can't, as a 35-year-old, I can't actually imagine drinking 12 of the last 14 days and like in any way being functional. Like I maybe my liver is just out of practice, but it's something I could have easily done as a 21-year-old, and these days much less so. And so I found the whole thing every off season. I get this sort of sense, like you say, Jonny, it's a big release for these guys that have to live like monks the rest of the year. But it's also kind of a quite immature way to respond to that particular release. And I guess if he's having fun, more power to him. But I do think it's funny that a 38-year-old man is on a bender for 12 of the last 14 days.
Yeah, like this is the most I've ever related to Geraint Thomas in my life, because in my final year of university or college, whatever you call it, me and one of my best mates, we both got dumped at exactly the same time with about a month to go until we graduated. So then we went out like 20 to 25 nights in a row, like just drowning our sorrows. And it does work.
Is Geraint Thomas drowning his sorrows?
Yeah, from the repressed life he has to lead in order to do his job functionally well.
But he does this every year, no? I was going to pick up on something you said, Kelly, about different people's definitions of being drunk. And some people, I bet there are some cyclists who would have 2 or 3 drinks and they'd be completely zonked. But I believe that Geraint Thomas is properly drunk. All our definitions of drunk, he probably exceeds that. But it also reminds me of, in the context of the Sky Ineos thing, it was a few years ago, Luke Rowe, Geraint Thomas's pal, Luke Rowe got in some big trouble for going on a bachelor party and breaking his leg whitewater rafting.
Oh, yeah.
Do you remember that story?
It was jumping into water that wasn't deep enough and therefore breaking his femur. Oh,
that is so much lamer than doing it while rafting.
Yeah, it was a whitewater rafting trip or something. And he was told he wasn't allowed to go because whitewater rafting was considered too dangerous a sport. But yeah, it sounds like pretty innocuous. But that, I suppose that reminds you that anything can happen at any point.
Wow, just to rebuff that a little bit, whitewater rafting is very not dangerous until it kills you. Generally, you don't break a femur whitewater rafting because you don't jump off rocks into pools that aren't deep enough. It was a slightly different. I can see like not allowing skiing, but I think they should be allowed to whitewater raft. Anyway, Geraint Thomas loves the beers.
This podcast is so much more fun when there's no cycling on. Look at us.
I enjoy it. Well, we actually have stories of other off-season exploits as well. So in addition to Geraint Thomas, who
respect,
may he live his best life, right? Like go for it, buddy. We also have Wout van Aert attempting to dance, which didn't go super well, and then Remco Evenepoel going to some sort of concert thing. We are as a trio are too old apparently to understand what this is. But let's start with Remco. What did Remco do?
In the weekly scouring of the barrel that is looking for news, I found a story that said
this time of year.
Yeah. I saw that in the kind of end of off-season blowout before a new training regime starts, Remco Evenepoel had been invited to, I've forgotten what it was called. What did I reference? That he'd been invited to some hard style. I mentioned this just before we started recording, and the guys just looked at me blankly, which was, I suppose, gratifying for me. Sitting middle of the pack in age anyway.
Yeah.
So
yeah, Jonny, you're the young one. You should know.
I know, that's the problem.
No, because hardstyle is from the 90s. Right. It is of my generation, and I vaguely remember. I wasn't quite old enough. I was like in middle school when it was big. But I remember it being a thing. I couldn't tell you what it is, but I remember it being a thing that like the high school kids in my neighborhood were talking about and listening to. And apparently, like everything else from the 90s, we're half a step away from Jinko jeans making a comeback. Hardstyle is back. Is that correct?
Apparently. It was the first I'd heard of it when I saw this. But Remco Evenepoel had been invited to some big thing, and there was a video of him dancing. Yeah, it was around about the same time when the Wout dancing videos emerged.
Yeah, how did the dancing compare?
I think Remco probably won. Although he was doing the sort of the early 2000s I'm a rapper dude thing with... yeah, it was a bit uncomfortable.
Too much.
Not... Yeah, but he knew what he was doing, at least it seemed. It wasn't the first time he'd ever done it, which is what it looked like with Wout van Aert.
I was just say, if we have any listeners out there who can provide more insight into hardstyle and what is happening and what happened before, maybe reach out. And this is a story that we should obviously follow up on in subsequent podcasts as we try to fill our off-season episodes.
So Remco's dancing was passable, if not good, but that's, I think, for a professional athlete that's not in like one of the American major leagues, where I feel like they have a bit more sort of charisma about them. How did Wout van Aert's compare? his limbs are too long. Like he's too big a guy, especially if he's in South America where like a lot of the other people on the dance floor are going to be smaller than him. Just there's something off about it, wouldn't there?
I'm going to throw it back to you, Jonny, and quote you even from your wonderful newsletter. You described him as the distant relative who's been dragged onto the dance floor at a wedding he was forced to attend. I mean, he's been invited to go and join this Rigoberto Urán's festival of cycling, sportive event, the dinners, the all sorts of things. Urán had a facial, which Van Aert was watching.
That was weird.
I like to imagine that there was some sort of, I don't know, maybe doping control at a bike race, and they were both sat there, and Urán was trying to fill the silence, started talking about his big event that he had later in the year, and Van Aert was like, "Oh, that sounds like fun," and then, oh crap, 3 months later, he's actually committing to the event, and he's gone. I like to imagine that's how it happened, but I mean, it looks like a lot of fun. Obviously, Urán is a huge deal in South America, so it is such a huge deal out there. It's like, I don't know what it's like in the UK. I don't think even football is as big as Rigoberto Urán is in Colombia.
He was on a stage singing, and then there were just like people, the crowds, hordes of people.
They're making a telenovela about him, like with decent actors. Apparently, it's going to like on a cable TV channel. He's a huge deal. So there's I'm sure as much as we might joke, Wout van Aert will have had a bloody good time, eating some great food. Maybe he went to Nairo Quintana's restaurant. Who knows? But he can't dance. No. He tried. What I like about it is he looked human. He looked like me on a dance floor.
We do need to move on. But we're going to take a quick break. Welcome back, everybody. Jonny, you're just back from a quite extensive Asian adventure. You were all over the place. Let me set it up a little bit. For anybody who listened to our Tour de France podcast, and in particular, some of our award shows at the end of the tour, you know that Pierre Muglac is ASO's greatest press officer and our favorite by some margin. So Jonny, you take it from here. Where does Pierre fit into your Japanese adventures?
We'll start at the beginning, but I'll be brief. So I go to Asia under the pretense of going to the Tour of Guangxi. Well, not under the pretense. I did go to the Tour of Guangxi. It was great. But then I was trying to line that up with also a trip to the Singapore and Saitama criteriums. And I inquired about getting on the press trip there, but turns out it's actually a very hard sort of group to crack into. I think it's quite a set group of, journalists and media people who that's their spots. And I got told in no uncertain terms that our company was too young to go.
By Pierre,
that was
to be clear.
By Pierre, yes, correct. So he said no, even though I was already going to be, I was like, right, I was going on holiday, can I come along? He was like, might be tricky. So I was like, fine, like that's the last award you're ever winning, buddy. Anyway, I carry on my travels. I go in various places in Japan. I end up in Tokyo for the final week and was staying in a capsule hotel, which are intriguing things. Everyone's sort of seen the pictures of just like the little sort of coffins that you try and go to sleep in. But it turns out they're much more involved than that. It's basically like a retirement home for like men who like solitude. It's a whole like system set up. So there's like these big living rooms with like comfy sofas and like vending machines and a TV that's on, and there's loads of like books to read and stuff, and you get beers and the vending machine, like, and everyone's just sitting there like in silence, like reading, watching TV, drinking beer, and it's actually delightful. Like if you ever need to just get away from it all, it's like $25-30 a night. Anyway, the one drawback is that the like washing situation is it's public bath. So there's like a cold bath, like a jacuzzi, and then there's like showers, but it's like you sit on like an upturned bucket basically, and you have like a handheld shower, like head of a shower, and you just have to like wash yourself like you would your bike or like a dog. So then after figuring this out, I then opted to go for just quite early morning showers, just so I wouldn't be, cheek to cheek with the great and the good of the Tokyo metropolitan area. But then one morning, this has also got long-winded when I started to be brief. Vital context, I'm walking out for my daily ritual sort of humiliation in a towel, I will add. And I walk past this, I'm tired, I'm not really looking where I'm going, but I can see he like clocks me. And so I'm like, okay, that's weird. And then there's like a mirror that I could look back and see who it was, just to see if this is like some dodgy guy. He's just staring at me, and I'm like, hang on a minute, I recognize this dude. And it is none other than ASO's Pierre Muglac. Well, not so fresh from a night out getting at 6 a.m. So he's doing his off season correctly. And he just in his French accent was like, what the actual fuck? And could not believe that he was just like whatever he'd been doing, he was now face to face with my torso. And we had a quick little chat. He then Yeah. He had him on Instagram, so maybe this is my ticket now to Saitama Criterium.
I was going to say, does this increase or decrease your chances of getting invited to Saitama next year? Because that really is the end goal, right?
It might have been if you hadn't already just told this story on air.
Yeah, so that was fun. Managed to, you never know when he was obviously there because he stayed on a week after the Saitama Criterium for some holiday as well. Every year you see everyone at the Tour de France, only in July, and then you have to you make friends with everyone again the next year. So it's nice to have this sort of stopgap, keep the working relationships going.
You're definitely going to remember each other.
Even at 6 a.m, the whole, on Slack, whether it's, Johnny's in Japan, what's he doing over there? He says he's working. Actually, I'm on job at 6 a.m. in a town in a public bathrooms. So
it's important to have recurring characters on a podcast like this. And I just really appreciate that Pierre Muglock has become that, right? We weren't expecting to talk about Pierre here on this off-season episode, but he's made himself available in the most unlikely of ways. Now, what we actually wanted to do, Jonny, I love that story. We wanted to ask you about this trip. So Guangxi in particular, right? Which is this race is always we joke about it, right? Because it's like the punishment race for most.
Punishment tour.
It's the punishment tour. If you're leaving a team, they're like, yep, you get to go do Guangxi. Or if you've done something bad, you can look down the start list and just know who in the World Tour is currently on the shit list, Director Sport.
Or if they're desperately trying to find a job.
Tell me about it. What was the first time you had been? What was it actually like? Is it a fun bike race to go to? Is it something that people should consider doing? Or was it just kind of a whole fake, UCI driven, follow the money kind of nonsense?
Obvious answer is Milan Vader, who apparently is Transvada or something, which is just one of those things where it's we're not going to actually pronounce your name that. Your name's Milan Vader, obviously. He won the bike race and he was chuffed to bits with it because he's come back from his injury. So he asked to go. So even if everyone treats it as a punishment tour, he's won this UCI World Tour stage race. So more for everyone else. I wouldn't put it in the category of one of these weird UCI show me the money and we'll put a bike race on races. It's a bit more involved than that. There were people with the fans watching, you could tell which ones had been told to stand there and which ones were genuinely curious. 'Cause they have, there's lots of kids walking around with red sort of little jackets and hats who are the volunteers, and it supposedly improves your social score if you are seen doing these and engaging with things going on, which is kind of weird, but anyway.
The social score being that kind of insane, your credit score on steroids.
So how good a person you are, according to the government. Yeah, if you jaywalk, you get knocked down some points or something. But yeah, but then there were real cycling fans there. There were a bunch of people out sort of riding, just general interest. Everyone who won a race seemed pretty happy with it. There was definitely some punishment vibes going on, and also riders didn't leave. Sam Welsford and Andreas Leknesson for DSM, I think both who are leaving. They DNS'd before stage one because they were ill, but then they were still there 6 days later into the race. So maybe you're not allowed to leave and you've got to stay, otherwise you get docked wages. Because otherwise, surely you book your own flight out. So that was weird.
Quite an expensive flight. It's not like flying home from Italy.
I checked it though for it was Luke Clapp as well, because I saw him in the hotel. I was like, what are you still doing it? And I then I'm so dull and boring that I checked how much it would cost for him to fly home to Australia, and it was only $500, US dollars. He's gonna be on a decent money. It's all just different, and it was cool to see that through the lens of bike race. But yeah, it's just a mad place.
I've always found that going to races like this, I've never been to Guangxi, but I've been to other races in Asia and sort of within cultures that I am not sort of particularly familiar with, and viewing them through a bike race is actually quite handy because you understand one of the things that is happening, right? And you can watch people interact with the thing that you understand, and how the French public interacts with the bike race. And so you can then kind of compare that to the way that a public is somewhere else interacts with the bike race. How the UCI or a European country would do a gala, and then you can kind of get the sense for how Chinese local government would do a gala that you went to, right? That kind of thing. Actually, I always found that kind of useful.
Kind of the point as well, isn't it?
Yeah, as somebody who's just sort of interested in the way that people all over the world operate and do their thing, right? I always kind of liked that. So there was a fair amount of controversy back in the day when these races were created and added to the World Tour at the expense of races with a lot more history. We've got Guangxi is a World Tour race, and Trobro-Leon, which is like this fantastic, really cool race up in Brittany that isn't. It was pretty contentious when they did this, and at the time felt very show me the money. Do you get the sense that like that is still the case, or is this? Do you think it's genuinely like helping the sport in China? Because that was the official line was like, we're globalizing the sport, we're bringing it to a country where racing at this level hasn't existed. That was the official line. The unofficial story was always like, well, somebody's paying, right? And that's why they got immediate World Tour status and all the rest. Was there any sense of that, or is it just sort of now it's become a part of the furniture? Like it's just part of this. It's been in the calendar for so long that stops being a story, basically.
Yeah, they've probably established enough now that it's just treated as, this is what happens in October. Like this is the final thing we do before we're allowed to go off. I think it's definitely like money or not. Like I think also it's like the sport desperately needs money. So if someone's going to give you it, like, and clearly like there's not much like scruples going on when it's like, who do we take money from? So if you want to add Chinese government to the list, then why not? Or the Gree Electronics company. But no, I think like having bike races not all in Europe is probably a good thing. But I think even for like the fans, and just like normal members of the public to see something like that happening, it probably has some sort of inherent good in it. I think it's also pretty good for a lot of the riders to experience these cultures as well. Like there was that unfortunate incident at the start of the race where 2 Intermarché riders got sent home because they were doing like racist poses and stuff on Instagram. It didn't blow up into a huge story. It was like a medium-sized scandal, which is unfortunate. And I think the race organisers were not very happy at all that it happened. That's probably a thing where it's like, okay, well now like there's probably a bunch of other people in the peloton who know that's not a thing you do. I don't know, sometimes you feel like attitudes in the peloton can be a bit backward. So anything that takes them out of Europe and takes like me and other people out of Europe.
Yeah, you hear all the time throughout the season, quite often when people start grasping at straws on week 3 of Grand Tours, you start asking riders what town they're in. They have no clue. Well, maybe there's a difference between the importance of the race at that point as well, and what value you place on that and where you are. I would imagine that there are at least a handful of riders who would quite embrace the idea of a trip to Asia, especially the younger riders. And I remember seeing some Instagram stories of, I think, a young Dutch rider in maybe his first 3 or 4 years of his career who likes to go to Asia at the end of every year. And it's, he was quite happy to embrace that as a neo-pro.
It's the young former Jumbo guy. What's his name? He goes, well, at least the one I'm thinking of goes to Thailand in the off-season every year. And actually and does a lot of his early season training in Thailand. I actually saw him outside Chiang Mai when I was there back in the Cycling Tips days. We did a tour there with a bunch of members. And then, at first you're like, oh, it's just some random dude that bought a Jumbo Visma kit. And then he gets closer and you're like, no, he's going too fast. He's going too fast to be some random dude.
A lot of them do it from like the Japan Cycle Cup as well. Hey, so there's Philip Valter's done it this year. I mean, why not? Like you spend the whole year in Europe. Why not just, go somewhere else for a bit?
Go do a race and then spend a few days having a holiday.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it's so removed from your normal life that it probably does help them to switch off quite a bit. And especially if they're not like awake at the same time, it's like some DS or whatever texting them asking about stuff. But also there are people you see so many riders in these various big cities in Asia, like everyone's wearing like Power Mile kits and Rafa and stuff. It's like, it's exactly the same as being like in New York or London or anywhere on a Sunday, seeing everyone going on their Sunday rides. I feel like I've not done a very good job of explaining the things I did. But yeah, I went to Sadhama Criterium as well, just as a fan with no press credential, and remembered how annoying it is to walk around at bike races where you can't just sort of go wherever you want. It's like such a pain. I've got a newfound respect for hunters. It'd be like everyone's pretending that it's a Tour de France stage. Like the riders, the sort of announcers and stuff. It's literally like a fan recreation of how it works, like with breakaway thing, and then a KOM jersey goes to the KOM point, and then you've got the DD the Devil out, like standing like out of his car and stuff. I think the fans like kind of either they buy into it and think everything's real because there is that significant language barrier. So it's kind of like they've read in like Western press, everyone taking the piss or whatever. Or it's just like, what, today we're just going to pretend this is real because we don't get to watch this.
Isn't it WWE? Like people go to those, just enjoy the ridiculous things that are happening in front of you. And we do like to make fun of it because it feels a bit silly when, all love and credit to our good friends over at places like Cycling News, but like Cycling News always runs a headline of like who won the Saitama Criterium. I struggle with that one. People are like, well, okay. The whole thing is clearly staged and clearly like scripted, right? Like you're talking scripted to the point of like the dude in the KOM jersey goes for the KOM and like all that stuff, right? Which they're very good athletes and they're probably able to drop most of the other locals to get chucked in that race anyway, but it's still very much together.
I would agree on the WWE thing, but then like people didn't really cheer Chris Froome's attack and then cheered other riders more or less. Like Peter Sagan, huge, they love him, but like Chris Froome attacked, which like I feel like that'd be more exciting to like us at that because he's like trying something out, but they just didn't care. And the other thing they do is they didn't do the like banging on the boards or the railing stuff as much. Maybe it's because there weren't boards. I can't remember. I think it must have been railing, but it was more just like every time they came around, it was like. It was very in keeping with how people over there are generally, but it's like polite applause, which was kind of nice. Like there's not like whooping and hollering and like just banging any sort of surface in the vicinity. It was just like, it was like the end of like a tennis point.
The Wimbledon of cycling.
Yeah, and actually by the finish line, they came around so quickly that you were kind of turning your head like that. So
I hope we get the official invite next year. We won't be quite so young. We won't be, 8 months old or whatever. And we can try to work our way into that group. What we're doing here is we're getting into the ground floor with Pierre, right? Because we know how ASO operates. I've watched a couple different press people work their way up slowly in the organization to the point where if we're best friends with Pierre.
I hope they remember who he is from the Tour podcast, because otherwise I spent like 5 to 10 minutes chatting about a dude that no one even knows who he is.
Oh, well, you did explain who
I think,
it was. Also, there's much more.
Yeah, that's true. I think next tour we should try and actually get these characters onto the podcast.
At the very least, we should get Pierre saying, you're listening to Get Collected Podcast.
Oh, like a cycling podcast type vibe.
Yep, we should definitely do that. Time for a good break. Welcome back, everybody. It is time for your news hits. We got a couple of things to talk about today. The first one, Caja Rural, the Spanish team, is complaining that the leak of some of its riders' alleged links to a dope doctor is a malicious attempt to discredit the team. We haven't talked about this one much yet, so I need a little bit of context here.
Yeah, this came out last. Apparently, it was sort of a non-open secret, but it was being whispered about at the Vuelta. In the lead up in the opening few days, a PDF titled something salacious like team doping something was sent around to all of the teams, the UCI, like the Vuelta, and maybe a couple of media organizations, containing sort of a cache of WhatsApp messages and audio files, allegedly of conversations between Caja Rural riders and I think his name's Dr. Maynard, being investigated for drug trafficking.
Operation Ilex?
Yeah. Yes, that's the big Spanish anti-doping investigation, which also, Miguel Angel Lopez, he was caught up with Maynard in some capacity, and that was sort of what led to him being chucked off Astana. This like investigation stuff is ongoing. Caja Rural have said there's no, it's none of it's true. None of their riders have done anything dodgy, and it was made up by someone who was like. Because there's a lot of debate over who the wildcard spot went to, the last Vuelta wildcard slot between the various Spanish pro teams, and Caja Rural got it. So they're saying that it was maybe one of their competitors for that spot, that's a huge accusation.
The investigation into Dr. Maynard is ongoing. Some of the Spanish dailies have been doing a really good job covering this. El País and Carlos has been in the Tour press room for like 45 years now. They've been doing a good job of sort of digging into this thing, but it is definitely not, there's no conclusion as of yet. So I guess we're bringing up the story because we haven't spent much time on it just yet, but it is something we're keeping an eye on. And it's just disconcerting because if a team like Caja Rural is able to do this and there's an active dope doctor within cycling again, like that spreads further, that has broader implications within the sport than just within this one team, right? Because logic dictates that unless Caja Rural is winning absolutely everything, there's probably other things happening else. The implications of this are broad, and we do want to keep an eye on it.
From what the messages say, I mean, who knows if these messages are true or not, but it seems to be that the team weren't involved at all, and it was the riders directly with the doctor. So, that could be riders who are struggling to maintain a contract or, just struggling to hang in there anyway. So they felt they needed that if they were doing what they're accused of. Because half the time you got other riders saying, oh, this is a new generation, the sport's changed, when actually it hasn't. And it's just the same stories with different characters. Two things can't be true at the same time. And you've had other positives this year, like you had the Jumbo-Visma rider, he had his B sample come back positive.
And Miguel Angel Lopez being done again.
And Miguel testing positive at a Grand Tour. That's the last time that anyone shout us at a press conference for asking a doping question, to be honest.
I think there's a bigger, broader storyline here. And I was actually discussing this with Joe Lindsay the other day of sort of what is actually happening with anti-doping right now, right? Because most of the people we're catching are semi-plausibly accidental ingestions, right? Because the testing has gotten so sensitive that we're picking up a lot more of those than we ever have before. And it also tends to be, with sort of the exception of Lopez, it tends to be quite smaller name riders. If you look at the list of riders that have been busted in the last 5-7 years, it's mostly names that you haven't really heard of, that are like outside the World Tour entirely, or are just domestiques or something like that. There are so many different explanations for that, and which one is the correct one, or which combination of explanations is the correct one, I think is a really interesting story and a big question for the sport right now. Again, if we're looking at the potential of a dope doctor being involved in cycling once again, the implications of that and what that means for what we think about the rest of what's happening in cycling. I don't want to sit here and say we have any idea at this point. I'm just saying that as journalists or reporters, the questions that come up from things like this are the things that I think are worth us diving into. I also realize the sort of ridiculousness of making a big important statement like that after spending the first 35 minutes of this podcast talking absolute nonsense. But we do
light and dark. We
do both. So
it's just not even like dope doctors being back in cycling, because like there are teams where it's the same doctors from back then who are now just squeaky clean and playing happy families and not doing anything dodgy. So
next on our little list here, speaking of Miguel Angel Lopez, just a little tiny news blip here. Kit?
Yeah, there was a rumor that Miguel Angel Lopez had been signed. That was the wording, but he certainly, the suggestion that he'd been approached by Yellow Cometa, which will be Polti Cometa next year, so Contador and Ivan Basso's team. They're looking for a marquee rider, having lost Lorenzo Fortunato to a World Tour team. Is Astana Fortunato?
Yes.
But yeah, so apparently, again, I think this is quite possibly a barrel scraper, but it's been vehemently denied by Mr. Basso himself. But yeah, he's still mid-suspension. He's still yet to find out. He's either going to be acquitted or banned for an amount of time. He's adamant he's clean. The violation dates back to the 2022 Giro, I think. So yeah, it remains to be seen. It would be a slightly odd signing to try and make at the time that they tried to make it. So I don't know. What do you think?
He's going to ride the Giro with Wout van Aert.
I think it's pretty unlikely. I think it's, I mean, beyond the realm of possibility, but the fact that Basso has denied it, and the less said about even Basso and doping in the same sentence is probably for the best at this point. Again, that is a bit of a barrel scraper. We'll leave that one. Lars van der Haar dislocated his shoulder and then relocated his shoulder in the middle of a cross race.
It's amazing.
If you haven't seen this video, you should edit, and you're not squeamish about such things. I
don't think it matters. You can't see anything.
Not bad.
Okay, maybe I'm just so unsqueamish that I had no concept of what it might be. It's a great...
dislocated some things, and so I was like, Anyway, it's pretty big, incredible. So he basically dislocated his shoulder and then kind of not a doctor, sort of stuck his armpit on the top tube and then kind of wrenched it down and basically relocated his shoulder mid-bike race, which tells me that this is not the first time this has happened.
Nope.
Right? Still looks incredibly painful.
Great.
And then he just kept racing.
The completely calm face as he did it.
Yeah.
Just a complete mask. Very impressive.
Took himself off to the side. He ran down a little verge to do it so he didn't get anyone else's way. And then as he's running back up to rejoin the route, he let someone go past who was running a lot faster. It was the presence of mind which really captured me.
Yeah, good moment of cyclocross.
Haco van der Hoorn is still, this is unfortunate. We shouldn't be laughing about this. Is still feeling the effects of concussion. And this is really unfortunate because we have seen concussion basically end careers before. I mean, Kit, before we hit record, you mentioned Ian Boswell. He's a pretty good example. Head injuries they're confusing, and they can start and stop, and they can, you feel like you're getting better and then you get worse, and it could just be a real roller coaster. And so I hope that maybe a good off season is enough time to get Taco back to where he needs to be, because this is really unfortunate news.
Yeah, he hasn't raced since the Tour of Flanders, which is when the crash happened. And for several weeks, he couldn't even read a book. He wasn't, watching TV, listening to music. He hasn't seen friends. He's now back at training and doing aero testing and that sort of thing. But he's talking about how any exertion is still not really possible, and he's still got a headache every day. And so I think he said something like, some weeks it feels like it's going well, but then it's 3 steps forward, 2 steps back. Well, hopefully a few more months, a bit more time. It's slightly worrying because he's such a great rider as well.
Do you remember who that, a few weeks ago, there was that other thing where a little news hit with a rider from that part of the world where they'd had concussion. I think they'll be retired now, and it was an interview with him and his partner.
Oh, it's Lamertink.
And that was it. And she was saying about how, like, since the crash and still now, he still, like, can just be quite irritable and, like, can't really control his emotions and stuff. Which obviously, when you say that, it's like, oh well, it's not like a serious physical ailment or anything like that, but it's like that. If you imagine like that for yourself, it's such a crazy change to your like general psyche, and like in terms of impacts in your everyday life, it's like a really serious physical thing.
I've got a friend who got concussion 6 months ago, and he's still got memory issues. It was also a bike injury.
So
and
scary.
It gets names, that's the thing. Yeah, it is. The brain is a fragile organ. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I mentioned this before, but my brother had to stop racing because of head injuries when we were kids, when we were juniors. Like, he was 17 years old, had a couple crashes in one race, had another crash a month later. 6 weeks after that, got hit in the head with a hockey puck at a high school hockey game. And that's the one that actually kind of tipped him over the edge, because it was a series of concussions for him. And he was a different person for 3 to 5 years. Really struggled in school and yeah, very emotional. And
at that age as well.
Yeah, it was a bit personal for me because I watched, obviously, somebody I love go through that. So yeah, I just hope Taco slowly recovers here. If you're going 3 steps forward, 2 steps back, you are going a step forward every once in a while, and so it may just take a long time. But like another example is Carmen Small, who basically had to retire because of her head injury, and has since become a very successful director. Right, like she was directing with Jumbo-Visma last season. She was just announced that she's going to be the head sports director at the new EF women's team. So it's not like it's the end, right? But it can take years to come back from some of these injuries. It's just a really scary thing. So with that, though, it is time for the 3 of us to wrap up. We do have a weekly pay-in this week. It's going to be a short one, but we have a returning champion. We have a defending champion. We have our man Jesse back, who is going to be taking on either Dane or Ronan for his second week. See if he can stick around.
Big question is, though, if you win 2, is that a dynasty, or do you need 3 for a dynasty? Like, when do dynasties start?
I think 3. I think 3.
You think 3?
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, you need to go for the triplet. At what point does somebody just get the job of the staff member that they're beating?
Ooh, raise the stakes.
Oh, like
is it 10? Is it 15? At what point are we just so embarrassed that we have to hire this person?
I mean, that's one way to do a podcast quiz, is that if you win enough, you get a job. You're making this whole thing like a bit Mr. Beast.
Well, let's jump over to this week's weekly pay and see if Jesse can do it. All right, everybody, it's time for your weekly pain. We've got a returning champion this week. We've got Jesse Jardim back. Jesse, we didn't actually ask you anything about yourself last week. I don't know. Who are you? What would you say you do here?
I live in Chicago, Illinois. I'm a cyclist. Surprise, surprise. I also happen to work for a big bike company here in the U.S. called Quality Bicycle Products, which I think I'm getting some recognition from Kaylee and Dane, as they know what that is.
Of course. Worked in the bike shop for a very long time.
Yeah. We're your favorite distributor. La-di-da.
Oh, yeah. Well, welcome back to the show. We've got another quiz for you today. Of course, we kind of explained the rules last week, but we'll briefly explain again. These are sudden death, lose and out games here. We bring back our returning champion until he loses, basically. So Jesse, you can keep coming back until you're out. You can challenge. Well, it's either Ronan or Dane this week you have available to challenge. Some weeks you could challenge Kit, some weeks you could challenge Jonny. But this week we've got these two, just like last week. Who would you like to challenge?
I beat Ronan last week. I feel like I could play it safe and try to beat him again. But I think, to be fair, I should challenge Dane. So I'm going to go with Dane.
I want redemption.
You'll have to wait for redemption, Ronan. Maybe next time.
Hopefully after he beats Dane.
I feel cheated.
Well, all right. So you've challenged Dane.
Here we are.
The gauntlet has been thrown physically, and we're going to get straight into this question. So this week's weekly pain question, not a game of categories. This is a game of Price is Right style rules. I'm looking for you to give me a number that doesn't go over the actual number. Closest to the number without going over is the winner. And so therefore, your question this week, Patrick Tybor, a 36-year-old Slovakian pro, has raced in the most nations of any active professional cyclist. How many nations has Patrick Tybor raced in? And we'll kick off with Dane. You go first. You were the challengee.
Can I ask for a clarification? You said most, like most countries. Is this year?
Yep.
Is this ever?
I think it's ever.
Okay.
I don't know. We'll have to go ask the quiz making intern, but I'm pretty sure it's ever.
Okay.
Does this just mean nations where a race happens to be located in?
So he's like physically like started a bicycle race or ridden through, I guess, a nation.
Yeah.
If a stage went through more than one country,
Right.
Which does happen sometimes. Nations, this rider, Patrick Tybor, 36-year-old, I think he's a kind of like a pro Conti kind of level rider, which is often the case. Actually, most of the top 10 in this list are guys who've like done a ton of racing in Asia and things like that. Anyway, what is the number? Dane, you got to give me a number.
All right.
What's your
Racing
guess?
this in his whole life.
According to Pro Cycling Stats. So, I don't know.
Yeah. Okay. We're gonna say 28.
All right, 28. That's your guess, Dane. Jesse, what do you think? Again, Price is Right rules.
There's so many countries.
I mean, the real question
That's
is, do you
true.
think it's more than 28?
Yeah, because the strategy here is if you think it's more
This
than
is how you
28,
win
you
the
say
game.
29, and then you're...
Do you think it's
Yeah.
more or less than 28?
I think it might be more than 28, so I'm going to say 29.
Jesse wins.
Nice.
46. Yep. So this dude has raced for the same continental team in Slovakia, Dukla Trenčín, some version of that, since 2006. And he's now 36 years old. And has obviously been all over the place. So he is a 2-time stage winner at the Tour of Bulgaria, stage winner of the Baltic Chain Tour, stage winner at the Tour de Maroc, Tour of Cameroon, Grand Prix Bradio.
That's a lot of wins.
How do you spell his name, sorry?
His last name is Tybor, Tybor.
Never even heard of this guy. I feel like he deserves more.
He should get
Right. Respect.
Yes.
If any of the listeners know Patrick, please make him aware of this week's podcast.
You were hugely impressed by the number of places that he has raced in.
Ronan, how many
All right, well-
nations have you raced in?
I do not know. Is there a way to find out? I know
Are
that
you on
I
Pro
raced.
Cycling Stats?
I know that I raced in the Czech Republic, or Czechia, as it's also known, for about 3 minutes. Which was the only 3 minutes I've ever been in the Czech Republic. No, I've only ever been to the Czech Republic for 3 minutes.
Was it a prologue or did you crash?
I mean, like I didn't even travel to a race there. I just was in the Czech Republic
see.
for a grand total of 3 minutes. We were doing the Saxon tour in Germany, I think, and we did like a big long climb. And at the top of it, there was a sign saying "Welcome to Czech Republic," if I remember correctly. And then we did a descent for like 3 minutes. Hit like 110k per hour on this ridiculous descent. Turned left at the bottom, and there was a sign saying "Welcome to Germany." So,
But that's a country you can add to your list. That's pretty cool.
That
It
is.
counts.
I'm not sure if Pro Cycling Stats will include that in my
So
list. But
I've just looked you up, Ronan. I've looked you up on Pro Cycling Stats. And according to this, you've raced in 10 countries, 30 races in Belgium, 7 in France, 7 in Netherlands, only 4 in Ireland somehow, 3 in Germany, 2 in Spain, 1 in Great Britain, 1 in Italy, 1 in Japan, 1 in Portugal.
Probably doesn't include a lot of like lower tier races. So that's
I think, this is only races that actually get into
Yeah.
Pro Cycling Stats, right? So our man Patrick Tybor may have raced in
Good,
actually more
probably
countries. But either way, it's more than
a lot more than
28.
28.
So Jesse still wins.
I think
That's it
myself
for-
and Patrick might actually have raced together, believe it or not.
Really?
Just looking here.
I I believe
But
it.
yeah, and not waste all your time but I'm almost certain that will have happened.
It is time to wrap up this week's Weekly Pain. Jesse remains the champion, and so we'll be back next week. Well, congratulations to Jesse for taking his second victory. He will be back next week, well, to try to build the first Weekly Pain dynasty, as we say here in America. All of our English is just, which, I'm all over the place here. I'm saying process now. It's ridiculous. Thanks everybody out there for listening. I also, before we wrap up here, I must mention, I'm teasing this right now, but we're going to have more details next week. We have something really cool coming up. So we're going to be partnering with a tour company to do a classics-based trip in the spring in Belgium, right? So Flanders-Roubaix, there's going to be, I don't want to say exactly who the special guest is, but this individual has won those races before. We're going to do a ride with this guy. He's going to show us how to ride on the cobbles. That'll be fun. So it's a riding / beer drinking / going to the bike races / I think racing the Roubaix Sportif potentially, or maybe the Flanders Sportif. I can't remember. But anyway, next week we'll have more details on this. If it's something you're interested in, keep an eye out. If you're not already a member, you do have to be a member to do this. So you got to go sign up right now. Go head over to escapecollective.com/join, and you'll get an email about this very, very cool trip next week. And with that, thanks for joining, Jonny. Good to have you back.
I feel like I could have used a bit more of a warm-up. If I'm invited on next week, I'll try and make amends.
And tight Wakatipu. It was good to have you back on.
Yep, always nice to have a chin wag.